Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Navigator, watching the massive crystalline structure that floated in the darkness ahead. The thing was bigger than any human city, made of what looked like living glass that pulsed with soft blue light. Every instrument on his ship was going crazy. The readings made no sense at all. "What do you think it is, Captain?" asked Chief Science Officer Dr. Lisa Parker as she studied her scanner readings. Her face showed the same confusion that Jake felt. Nothing in their databases matched what they were seeing. "I have no idea," Jake replied honestly. "But whatever it is, it's definitely not natural. Someone or something built this thing." The Navigator had been exploring this sector of space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that humans could settle on. They were further from Earth than any human ship had ever gone before. Finding alien technology was not what they had expected. "Sir, the energy readings are getting stronger," reported Lieutenant Sam Brooks from the sensor station. "It's like the thing is waking up or something." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The structure had been dormant when they first detected it 2 days ago. Now it was showing signs of activity. That could mean only one thing. "Someone was home. I'll stop," Jake ordered. "Bring us to a safe distance. And get me Admiral Kevin Hayes on the long-range communicator. He needs to know about this." The connection to Earth took several minutes to establish. When Admiral Hayes appeared on the screen, his weathered face showed immediate concern. "What have you found out there, Jake?" "Something big, sir. Alien technology, definitely active. We're maintaining our distance, but it's clearly aware of our presence." "Any signs of hostility?" "Not yet. But sir, this thing is massive. If it wanted to hurt us, I don't think we could stop it." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Follow first contact protocols. Be friendly but cautious. Do not make any aggressive moves. The whole human race is watching, Captain." The connection ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts and his crew. Dr. Parker moved closer to him, her voice low. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of energy field forming around the structure. It looks like they're preparing to send something our way." "Weapons?" Jake asked, his hand moving instinctively toward the alarm button. "No, sir. It's more like a message of some kind. The energy patterns are too organized to be random." Jake nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The bridge lights dimmed as the alien transmission filled the view screen. At first, there was only swirling patterns of light and color. Then the patterns began to form shapes that almost looked like mathematical equations. Slowly, the shapes changed again, becoming something that might have been language symbols. "They're trying to communicate," Dr. Parker whispered. "They're showing us their language step by step." For the next hour, the crew watched as the alien transmission taught them the basics of their communication system. It was like watching a master teacher explain complex ideas to children. By the end, their universal translator had learned enough to provide basic understanding. Then everything changed. The crystalline structure suddenly blazed with brilliant light, and 3 smaller ships appeared out of nowhere. They didn't fly toward the Navigator so much as they simply materialized closer and closer, like they were stepping through space itself. "Red alert," Jake ordered, but kept his weapons powered down. "All hands to battle stations, but do not fire unless I give the order." The alien ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. They seemed to be made of the same living crystal as the larger structure, but they shifted and flowed like liquid light. They took positions around the Navigator, not threatening but clearly in control of the situation. "Captain Morrison of the human vessel." The voice came through their communicators, speaking perfect English with no accent at all. "I am HFY of the Galactic Council. We have been waiting for your species to reach this level of development." Jake stepped forward, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Welcome, HFY. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Navigator. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with other intelligent species." Peace. The alien's voice seemed to consider the word carefully. "An interesting concept. We represent the Galactic Council, a governing body of 47 species that maintains order across this galaxy. We have watched your species for some time, and we have decided it is time for formal contact." Dr. Parker checked her instruments and leaned close to Jake. "Captain, their ships are doing something to local space-time. The physics readings are impossible." Jake nodded slightly to show he heard her, then spoke to the aliens again. "We're honored by your attention, HFY. What can we do for you?" "You misunderstand, Captain Morrison. The question is what we can do for you. Your species shows potential, but you also show dangerous tendencies. You fight among yourselves, you act on emotion rather than logic. Your thoughts are chaotic and unpredictable. The alien's words carried a tone that Jake didn't like. It sounded like a parent scolding a child. With respect, Zephi, we're proud of our diversity. Our differences make us strong. Strength through chaos? The alien seemed genuinely puzzled. This is not possible. True strength comes from unity, from harmony of purpose. This is what we offer your species. Join us in the harmony and know perfect peace. What exactly is this harmony you're talking about? The linking of minds across space and time. The end of loneliness, of conflict, of the pain of individual existence. All species who join the Council experience this gift. Your thoughts become part of the greater whole. Your fears and angers fade away, replaced by perfect understanding. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. The aliens were talking about some kind of mind control, and if we refuse this gift? Refusal is difficult to understand. Why would any species choose suffering over peace? But we are patient. We will give your people time to consider. 30 of your standard days. Then we will return for your answer. And if our answer is still no, for the first time Zephi's voice carried something that might have been sadness, then we will be forced to bring you into the harmony against your will. It is our responsibility to end suffering wherever we find it, even if the sufferers do not yet understand their need. The alien ships began to fade, becoming transparent like ghosts. We will await your decision, Captain Morrison. Think carefully. The peace we offer is beyond your imagination. Then they were gone, vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. The great crystalline structure went dark and silent once more. Jake stood in the sudden quiet of his bridge, feeling the weight of an entire species on his shoulders. Humanity had just received its first ultimatum from the stars, and he had the feeling that their answer would determine whether the human race remained free or became just another voice in an alien chorus. Set course for Earth, he ordered quietly. Maximum speed. Admiral Hayes needs to hear about this immediately. As the navigator turned toward home, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against more than just time. President Helen Baker sat at the head of the long table in the emergency session room deep beneath the White House. Around her, the most important people on Earth argued about humanity's future. The holographic display in the center of the room showed Captain Morrison's recording of the alien encounter, playing for the 100th time in 3 days. We have to consider their offer seriously, said Dr. Richard Stone, her chief advisor. These aliens have technology we can't even understand. If they can really end war and suffering, maybe we should listen. Listen to what? Snapped General Lisa Martinez from across the table. They're talking about taking over our minds. That's not peace, that's slavery. President Baker raised her hand for silence. The decision has been made. We're sending a diplomatic mission to meet with this Galactic Council. Ambassador Claire Mitchell will lead the team. Ambassador Mitchell stood up from her chair. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen 40 years of international diplomacy. Madam President, I'm honored by your confidence, but I have to ask. What if they won't negotiate? What if it's really join or die? Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Take Dr. Greg Turner with you as our xenobiologist, and Colonel Ryan Cooper as military advisor. 3 weeks later, the diplomatic vessel UES Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace near the galactic core. What they saw there took their breath away. The alien capital world hung in space like a jewel, but it was unlike any planet they had ever imagined. The surface glowed with patterns of light that pulsed in perfect rhythm, like a heartbeat made of cities. Dear God, whispered Dr. Turner as he studied his readings. The whole planet is alive, not just the life forms on it, but the planet itself. It's one giant organism. Colonel Cooper checked his weapon systems out of habit, then remembered that they were here as guests. Ma'am, our sensors are detecting millions of different species down there, all moving in perfect coordination. No conflicts, no arguments, no individual movement patterns at all. Ambassador Mitchell nodded grimly. That must be their harmony in action. Let's go see what we're really dealing with. The shuttle that came to escort them to the surface was made of the same flowing crystal as the ships they had met before. As they descended through the atmosphere, they could see the alien cities spread out below them like living artwork. Buildings that grew like plants, transportation systems that flowed like rivers of light, and millions of beings moving together like dancers who had rehearsed the same routine for thousands of years. The Great Assembly Building was a massive crystal dome that reached high into the clouds. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in perfect silence, their attention focused on a single point of light at the center of the chamber. When the humans entered, every head turned toward them at exactly the same moment. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the light spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am the collective voice of the Galactic Council. We are pleased that you have come to hear our offer." Ambassador Mitchell stepped forward, trying not to show how nervous she felt. "Thank you for receiving us. We're here to discuss the terms of contact between our species and your council." "Terms?" The collective voice seemed puzzled. "There are no terms to discuss. There is only the choice between harmony and chaos, between peace and suffering. We offer you the greatest gift in the galaxy, the end of loneliness." "We appreciate your offer," Mitchell replied carefully, "but we'd like to understand more about what joining your harmony would mean for humanity." The light pulsed brighter, and suddenly Mitchell could feel something touching the edges of her mind. It was warm and inviting, like being welcomed into a loving family. "Would you like to experience it directly, Ambassador? We can show you what unity feels like." Mitchell looked at her team. Dr. Turner nodded encouragingly, while Colonel Cooper shook his head in warning. She made her decision. Yes, but only briefly. The touch in her mind grew stronger, and suddenly Mitchell wasn't alone in her own head anymore. She could feel the thoughts and emotions of billions of beings, all connected in perfect harmony. There was no anger, no fear, no doubt, no pain. Every question had an answer, every problem had a solution, and every individual was part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than themselves. But there was something else too. As wonderful as the unity felt, Mitchell realized that she couldn't find herself in it anymore. Her individual thoughts, her personal memories, her unique perspective on the world, all of it was dissolving into the greater whole. She was becoming part of the collective, losing what made her Claire Mitchell. With enormous effort, she pulled her mind back from the connection. The sudden return to individual consciousness felt like being thrown into ice water. She gasped and staggered while Colonel Cooper caught her arm to steady her. "That was incredible," she said when she could speak again, "but also terrifying. In that unity, I wasn't me anymore." "You were more than you," the collective voice replied. "You were part of something greater. The individual self is an illusion, Ambassador. It causes nothing but pain and confusion." Dr. Turner leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. "But individual differences are what drive evolution, creativity, progress. Without them, how do species grow and change? Growth and change are unnecessary when perfection has been achieved," the collective voice answered. "We have eliminated war, crime, mental illness, and interpersonal conflict. Our member species want for nothing because they all want the same things." Ambassador Mitchell felt a chill at those words. "And what about those who don't want to join? What about species that prefer their independence? Such species are suffering needlessly. It is our moral duty to end that suffering, even if they do not yet understand their need. We have never encountered a species that did not eventually see the wisdom of unity. You forced species to join against their will?" Colonel Cooper's voice was sharp with anger. "We have freed them from the prison of individual consciousness," the voice replied without any hint of shame. In time, they all thanked us for our gift. The meeting continued for hours, with the humans asking questions and the council providing answers that revealed the true scope of what they were facing. The Galactic Council wasn't just a government. It was a collective mind that had absorbed dozens of civilizations over thousands of years. Each species that joined added their knowledge and abilities to the whole, but lost their individual identity in the process. When the humans finally returned to their ship, they sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Ambassador Mitchell spoke. "They're not evil. That's what makes this so terrifying. They genuinely believe they're helping people by taking away their free will." "What do we tell Earth?" asked Dr. Turner. Mitchell looked out at the alien planet below, where millions of beings lived in perfect harmony and perfect slavery. "We tell them the truth, that we're facing something that wants to save us by destroying what makes us human." Colonel Cooper checked his weapon one more time, knowing it would be useless against the power they had witnessed. "And if they won't take no for an answer?" Ambassador Mitchell thought about the feeling of losing herself in the collective mind, and her voice hardened with determination. "Then we fight. Even if we lose, we fight. Because some things are worth dying for, and the right to be ourselves is one of them." The UES Endeavour began its long journey back to Earth, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its eternal dance of unity, patient and certain that humanity would eventually see reason. After all, they always did in the end. But they had never encountered a species quite like humans before, and they had no idea what humanity was capable of when backed into a corner. The Council's perfect harmony was about to meet the beautiful chaos of human determination, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency meeting in the Pentagon lasted 18 hours straight. President Baker looked exhausted as she listened to Ambassador Mitchell's report for the third time. Around the table, military leaders and scientists argued about options that all seemed hopeless. "So they're coming whether we agree or not," said Admiral Hayes, his weathered hands folded in front of him. "And their technology is so far beyond ours that conventional weapons are useless." "Not just useless," added Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the head of Project Prometheus. "Our weapons might as well be sticks and stones compared to what they have." General Martinez slammed her hand on the table. "Then what do you suggest? That we just give up? Let them turn us all into mindless drones?" "There might be another way," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "Project Prometheus wasn't originally designed as a weapon. We were studying the unique electromagnetic patterns that human brains produce when we think and feel." President Baker leaned forward. "Explain." "Every species they've absorbed was probably telepathic or had some kind of unified consciousness to begin with. But humans are different. Our minds produce chaotic, unpredictable thought patterns. What if that chaos could be weaponized?" The room went quiet. Dr. Rodriguez continued, her voice gaining confidence. "Their power comes from mental unity, from billions of minds thinking in perfect harmony. But what would happen if we introduced pure chaos into that system? What if we could broadcast the full spectrum of human thought directly into their collective consciousness?" Admiral Hayes frowned. "You're talking about using our own minds as weapons?" "Exactly. The Chaos Engine could amplify and broadcast human thought patterns across subspace frequencies. If their unity is their strength, then our chaos might be their weakness." President Baker made the decision that would define humanity's future. "Do it. How long do you need?" "The prototype will be ready in 40 days. Just in time." Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Defiance, watching the construction crews make final adjustments to the strange device mounted in the ship's forward section. The Chaos Engine looked like a cross between a radio telescope and a torture device. All gleaming metal and crackling energy fields. "Still can't believe we're going to war using our own thoughts as ammunition," muttered his first officer, Commander Beth Taylor. Jake nodded grimly. "Dr. Rodriguez says the theory is sound. Human consciousness is too chaotic and unpredictable for their collective mind to process. It should cause feedback that disrupts their unity. And if she's wrong, then we die free instead of living as slaves." The human fleet had assembled in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 53 ships, the most powerful vessels humanity had ever built, all equipped with prototype Chaos engines. Leading the fleet were Captain Susan Walsh in the UES Liberty and Captain Ben Parker in the UES Vanguard. It wasn't much compared to what they were facing, but it was everything humanity had. On Earth, Dr. Rodriguez monitored the final preparations from her laboratory. The Chaos Engine worked by reading the electrical patterns in human brains and amplifying them into a subspace broadcast. The more chaotic and emotional the thoughts, the more powerful the effect would be. She had volunteered the entire crew of the Defiance to be the primary broadcast source. "Doctor, we're detecting massive space-time distortions at the edge of the solar system," reported her assistant, Dr. Mike Chen. "Whatever's coming, it's big." The long-range sensors showed something that defied description. The Galactic Council fleet materialized out of hyperspace like a living nightmare. The ships were enormous organic structures that looked more grown than built, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Leading them was something that could only be the Nexus Harmony, a world-sized vessel that contained millions of linked minds. Zeph High's voice echoed across all human communication frequencies. "People of Earth, this is your final opportunity. Join us willingly and know peace. Resist and we will be forced to bring you into the Harmony against your will. The choice is yours." Captain Morrison opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Defiance. Today we fight not just for our lives, but for the right to remain human. Remember what you're fighting for. Remember everyone you've ever loved, everyone you've ever lost, every dream you've ever had. Let them feel what it means to be human. President Baker's voice came through on a secure channel to all ship commanders. The eyes of history are upon you. Win or lose, you carry the hopes and dreams of our entire species. Show them that humanity will not go quietly into their perfect night. The battle began as the Council ships advanced into the asteroid belt. Their weapons were unlike anything in human experience, beams of energy that seemed to phase through matter before striking their targets. The asteroid series simply disappeared, converted into pure energy in the blink of an eye. Captain Walsh and the Liberty tried to engage the lead Council ship, but her weapons had no effect. The alien vessel's defenses adapted to each attack, learning and countering every tactic she tried. Within minutes, the Liberty was crippled and drifting. All ships activate chaos engines on my mark, Morrison ordered. Remember, focus on your strongest emotions. Love, hate, fear, hope, everything that makes you human. Dr. Rodriguez watched her instruments as 53 ships began broadcasting the chaotic patterns of human consciousness into space. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The Council ships began to veer off course, their perfect formations breaking apart as their pilots experienced something they had never felt before. Individual thought. On the Nexus Harmony, millions of linked minds suddenly found themselves flooded with the raw, unfiltered experience of human emotion. They felt love so strong it hurt, fear so deep it paralyzed, anger so pure it burned, and hope so desperate it broke hearts. The perfect unity of the harmony shattered like glass, leaving each individual consciousness alone and terrified in their own minds for the first time in millennia. But the weapon had a price. On the human ships, the feedback from the Chaos Engine affected the crews as well. Morrison watched his own hands shake as visions of alternate realities flooded his mind. He saw versions of himself where he had never joined the military, where Earth had never been contacted by aliens, where humanity had chosen a different path entirely. Around him, crew members struggled with their own visions. Some laughed uncontrollably, others wept, and a few simply stared into space as their minds grappled with the infinite possibilities of existence. But they held their posts, broadcasting their chaos into the void and watching it tear apart the most perfect civilization the galaxy had ever known. The Council fleet began to retreat, their ships fleeing in all directions as their crews fought to maintain any kind of coherent thought. The Nexus Harmony itself was spinning slowly, its surface lights flickering erratically as millions of minds tried to reconnect and failed. "Sir, they're running," reported Commander Taylor, her voice shaky but victorious. "The entire fleet is in full retreat." Morrison nodded, but he felt no joy in the victory. Through the mental chaos, he could hear the screams of alien minds experiencing individual consciousness for the first time. They had won, but at what cost? "Stand down the chaos engines," he ordered, "and prepare medical teams. I think we're going to have some very confused aliens who need our help." As the human fleet began rescue operations, Dr. Rodriguez on Earth stared at her instruments in wonder and horror. They had proven that human chaos could break even the most perfect unity, but they had also unleashed something that could never be contained again. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The perfect harmony was broken, and in its place was something new and terrifying and beautiful. The chaotic symphony of individual minds learning to think for themselves once more. The asteroid belt had become a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered perfection. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the medical bay of his ship, looking at the alien beings his crew had pulled from the wreckage of Council vessels. They huddled in corners, their crystalline forms dim and flickering, experiencing the terror of individual consciousness for the first time in thousands of years. Dr. Lisa Parker worked alongside alien medics who had volunteered to help their own people. "Captain, they're in complete shock. Imagine if you suddenly couldn't hear your own thoughts but instead heard everyone else's. Then imagine the opposite happening. These beings have never been alone in their own minds before." One of the aliens, a creature that looked like living light trapped in glass, reached out toward Morrison with a trembling appendage. When it spoke, its voice was weak and confused. "Please, human captain, make the silence stop. I cannot hear my people anymore. I am alone." "How do you survive being so alone?" Morrison knelt beside the alien, his heart breaking for a creature that had never known the simple experience of being an individual. "You learn to find strength in yourself. You learn that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, and you learn to choose when to connect with others." "Choose?" The alien's form brightened slightly with curiosity. We have never chosen anything. The Harmony chose for us. The Harmony knew what was best. Across the medical bay, Dr. Greg Turner was working with a group of aliens who seemed to be adapting better to individual consciousness. They were asking questions, lots of questions, about everything from human emotions to the concept of personal opinions. Dr. Turner, one of them said, its voice filled with wonder. Is it true that humans can disagree with each other and still be friends? Not only can we, but we often become better friends because of our disagreements. Arguing and making up, debating and learning from each other, that's how we grow. The alien was quiet for a moment, processing this impossible concept. In the Harmony, disagreement was impossible. All minds thought the same thoughts. But that means we never learned anything new. On the bridge, Commander Beth Taylor was coordinating rescue operations across the battlefield. The human ships were working alongside those council vessels that had regained some level of function, saving lives without regard for species or allegiance. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Nexus Harmony, she reported. It's strange. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the massive world ship. What Morrison saw there was chaos beyond imagination. Millions of beings wandered through corridors and chambers, all talking at once, all asking questions, all experiencing the overwhelming rush of individual thought. HFY appeared on the screen, but the being that had once spoken with such certainty now seemed lost and confused. Captain Morrison, I need help. The Harmony is broken. Millions of minds that were once connected are now separate, and they are afraid. Morrison felt a surge of sympathy for his former enemy. What can we do to help? I do not know. For 10,000 years the Harmony made all decisions. Now I must choose, and I do not know how to choose. What does it mean to want something for yourself? What does it mean to have an opinion that no one else shares? Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice came through the ship's communications system from Earth. Captain, I'm monitoring the situation from here. The Chaos Engine effect is permanent. Their collective consciousness has been completely disrupted. They'll never be able to reform the Harmony as it was. Is that good or bad? Morrison asked. That depends on what they choose to do with their freedom. Over the following days, Morrison watched as the former council members struggled with concepts that humans took for granted. Some aliens thrived in their new individuality, discovering creativity and personal expression for the first time. Others curled up in corners, unable to cope with the silence in their minds. Dr. Parker had set up counseling sessions, teaching basic concepts of individual identity to beings who had never needed to think of themselves as separate entities. Remember, she would tell them, being individual doesn't mean being selfish. You can still care about others, still work together, still love and be loved. The difference is that now you choose to do these things. One young alien, barely more than a child by its species standards, raised a tentacle-like appendage. Dr. Parker, if I can choose what to think now, does that mean I can choose to be wrong? Yes, you can choose to be wrong. And that's actually a wonderful thing. How can being wrong be wonderful? Dr. Parker smiled. Because if you can be wrong, that means you can also learn to be right. And the journey from wrong to right is how you grow as a person. Meanwhile, Captain Susan Walsh was recovering from her injuries aboard the medical ship UES Mercy. The Liberty had been destroyed in the battle, but she and most of her crew had survived. She found herself talking with HFY during one of the aliens' visits to learn about human resilience. Captain Walsh, HFY said, its form more solid now as it learned to maintain individual consciousness. Why did you humans fight so hard to remain separated from each other? The Harmony offered perfect peace. Walsh looked out at the stars through the medical bay window. Because perfect peace isn't living. It's just existing. We humans believe that struggle gives life meaning. Our fights, our mistakes, our victories earned through pain and effort, that's what makes us who we are. But you suffer so much. I can see it in your thoughts now that I am learning to read individual minds. You carry pain and fear and loneliness, and say, yes, we do. But we also carry hope and love and joy. You can't have one without the other. The Harmony gave you peace, but it also took away your ability to truly appreciate joy because you never experienced sorrow. HFY was quiet for a long time. I think I am beginning to understand. In the Harmony, we felt contentment but never happiness. We felt unity but never love. We felt certainty but never hope. Back on Earth, President Baker was dealing with the political aftermath of humanity's first interstellar war. The victory had come at a cost. The Chaos Engine technology had affected human minds as well. creating new forms of limited telepathic connection among some people. Families reported being able to sense each other's emotions across great distances. Some individuals claimed to receive flashes of alien thoughts and memories. Dr. Rodriguez worked around the clock to understand these changes. Madam President, it appears that breaking the alien harmony has had unexpected consequences. Humanity is developing its own form of limited collective consciousness, but one that preserves individual identity. Is that dangerous? I don't think so. It's more like an enhancement of human empathy and intuition. People are becoming more connected to each other emotionally, but they're still maintaining their personal thoughts and individual will. In space, the rescue operations continued. Captain Ben Parker of the Vanguard had taken command of a joint human-alien fleet, working to help Council species adapt to their new reality. Some species were handling the transition better than others. The Zephyrian race, HFY's people, were natural individualists who had been forced into the harmony against their will centuries ago. Now free, they were rediscovering their culture of art and philosophy. Other species, like the collective builders who had created the great crystal ships, were struggling to function without unified consciousness guiding their every action. Captain Parker, reported one of the Zephyrian volunteers, we are receiving distress calls from 17 different council worlds. Entire civilizations are in chaos as their populations learn to think as individuals. Parker nodded grimly. Then we'd better get busy. Looks like humanity just became teachers to half the galaxy. As the weeks passed, a new understanding began to emerge from the chaos. The former council species were learning that individuality didn't mean isolation. They could still work together, still care for each other, still build great things as a community. The difference was that now they chose to do so, and in that choice lay the seed of something entirely new. A galactic civilization based not on forced unity, but on voluntary cooperation. A harmony born not from the elimination of discord, but from the beautiful music that different voices could create when they chose to sing together. The perfect harmony was broken forever, but something better was beginning to take its place. 6 months after the battle that shattered the Galactic Council's perfect harmony, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the space station New Harmony, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the orbital facility. But unlike the old Council's rigid coordination, these ships moved with the beautiful chaos of individual choice, each captain making their own decisions about approach vectors and docking procedures. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human architects had worked with Zephyrian artists and collective builder engineers to create something that had never existed before. A structure built by many minds working together by choice rather than compulsion. The result was both functional and beautiful, with sweeping curves and crystalline spires that caught and reflected the light of nearby stars. Captain Morrison, came a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see HFY approaching, but the alien looked different now. Its crystalline form had developed unique patterns and colors that marked it as an individual, rather than part of a collective. Most remarkably, it moved with the slightly uncertain gait of someone still learning to make personal decisions. Hello, HFY. How are you adapting to the new reality? The alien's form flickered with what Morrison had learned was the equivalent of a smile. Each day is a new adventure and choice, Captain. Today I chose to have this conversation with you. Yesterday I chose to spend time in meditation, thinking my own thoughts. Tomorrow I may choose something entirely different. They walked together through the station's central hub, where beings from 47 different species mingled freely. Some were former council members learning to embrace individuality, while others were representatives of species that had hidden from the council's influence for millennia. All were here by choice, working together to build something new. Ambassador Claire Mitchell was in the main conference room, facilitating a discussion between 3 species that had been enemies before the harmony's fall. Without the collective consciousness to enforce peace, old conflicts had resurfaced on several worlds. But now, instead of forced unity, they were learning to negotiate and compromise. The Terran approach to conflict resolution is fascinating, one of the delegates was saying. You actually allow disagreement to exist while still maintaining cooperation. Not just allow, Mitchell replied. We encourage it. Some of our greatest advances have come from people who disagreed with the majority opinion and were brave enough to say so. In another part of the station, Dr. Lisa Parker was working with a team of xenobiologists from 12 different species, studying the long-term effects of the Harmony's collapse. What they were discovering was remarkable. Dr. Parker, said her Zephyrian colleague Dr. Veltar, our preliminary findings suggest that the forced unity of the Harmony was actually slowing evolution across the galaxy. Species that had been stagnant for thousands of years are now showing rapid development in art, science, and philosophy. That makes sense, Parker replied. Evolution requires variation and selection pressure. If everyone thinks the same thoughts and makes the same choices, there's no room for growth. On Earth, President Helen Baker was dealing with the political challenges of humanity's new role as reluctant teachers to a galaxy learning about freedom. The humans who had been affected by the Chaos Engine had formed a loose network of enhanced empaths who could help alien species adjust to individual consciousness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had established training centers where former council members could learn basic concepts like personal preference, creative expression, and moral choice. The work was slow and sometimes heartbreaking, as beings struggled with concepts that human children mastered naturally. Today we're going to practice having opinions, she told a group of young aliens who had never experienced individual thought. I want each of you to look at these color patterns and tell me which one you like best. One small creature, resembling a cross between a butterfly and a crystal formation, raised a tentative appendage. But Dr. Rodriguez, how do I know which one I like? In the Harmony, we liked what we were told to like. There's no right or wrong answer, Rodriguez assured the creature. Just look at the colors and notice how they make you feel. The one that makes you feel happy or peaceful or excited, that's the one you like. The alien stared at the patterns for a long time, its crystalline body shifting through subtle color changes as it processed entirely new sensations. Finally, it pointed to a swirling pattern of blue and gold. This one makes me feel warm inside. Is that what liking something means? That's exactly what it means. Back on the station, Captain Morrison received a priority message from Admiral Hayes. The content was both encouraging and concerning. 17 former Council worlds had successfully transitioned to individual consciousness and were thriving. But 23 others were struggling with civil unrest as populations dealt with the shock of sudden freedom. We're getting requests for help from across the galaxy, Admiral Hayes reported via hologram. Species that have never had to make individual decisions are finding it overwhelming. Some are asking us to help them rebuild a form of collective consciousness. And our response? We help them find their own path, whatever that might be. If they choose some form of unity, that's their right, as long as it's truly their choice and not forced on them. Morrison nodded. The hardest lesson humanity was learning was that not every species would choose the same kind of freedom. Some might prefer limited forms of collective consciousness, while others might embrace radical individualism. The key was making sure it was a genuine choice. In the station's cultural center, something unprecedented was happening. Artists from dozens of species were collaborating on works that expressed their newly discovered individual perspectives. A Zephyrian composer worked with a human musician to create symphony that incorporated both species' understanding of harmony. Collective builder architects were learning to design buildings that reflected personal taste, rather than pure functionality. Dr. Greg Turner watched the artistic explosion with fascination. It's remarkable, he told his research partner, a former council philosopher named Kethwin. Your people are rediscovering creativity that was suppressed for millennia. Not rediscovering, Kethwin replied, its form shimmering with new patterns of thought. Discovering for the first time. The Harmony gave us knowledge but not wisdom, information but not insight. Now we must learn to think our own thoughts and create our own beauty. The transformation wasn't without its costs. Some individuals, overwhelmed by the responsibility of choice, suffered from what Dr. Parker termed freedom anxiety. Support groups had formed across the galaxy, led by humans and adapted aliens who understood the challenges of individual consciousness. But for every tragic case, there were dozens of success stories. Former council members were writing poetry, composing music, falling in love, having arguments, making mistakes, and learning from them. They were becoming truly alive for the first time in their existence. HFY had become something of a spokesperson for the transition, traveling to worlds where populations struggled with their new reality. Its message was simple. Individual thought is not a burden to be endured, but a gift to be cherished. In the harmony, we were perfect but static. Now we can be imperfect and growing. As Morrison prepared to return to Earth, he reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They had not just won a war. They had accidentally liberated half the galaxy from a form of spiritual slavery, so subtle that its victims had seen it as paradise. The new Free Worlds Alliance was taking shape, based on principles that humanity had fought for throughout its history: the right to self-determination, the value of individual thought, and the beauty of cooperation, chosen freely rather than imposed by force. President Baker's final message to the Alliance's founding conference captured the spirit of what they were building. We offer you not the false peace of enforced unity, but the true harmony that comes when different voices choose to sing together. In our diversity, we find strength. In our discord, we discover music more beautiful than any single voice could create alone. The galaxy was no longer perfect. It was messy, chaotic, unpredictable, and frequently frustrating. Species argued with each other, individuals made mistakes, and society struggled with problems that had never existed under the harmony. But it was also alive in a way it had never been before. New ideas bloomed like flowers after a long winter. Art flourished in forms that no collective mind could have imagined. Love became possible between individuals who chose each other, rather than being programmed to care. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck one last time, watching the beautiful chaos of free beings going about their chosen lives. Children from a dozen different species played together in the station's parks, each maintaining their unique nature while learning from the others. The Galactic Council's perfect harmony was gone forever, shattered by humanity's gift of chaos. In its place was something infinitely more complex and challenging, but also infinitely more beautiful: the symphony of individual voices learning to create music together by choice. And in that choice lay the seed of a future brighter than any collective mind could have imagined.